I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm presenting from today, the Wadawurrung people, and I'd like to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land, sea and skies in Jan Juk. Today is a continuation from a presentation that we did at the end of February on governance as part of the Changemakers programming. In that session, which I anticipate most people who'll be watching this may have attended, we covered a lot of different bits and pieces around governance, but the example of Fabelo was brought up as possibly a great model for adoption by a few different groups that reside in the G21 region. A lot of people who attended that event did allude to the fact that there was a lot of exhaustion and burnout within their volunteer cohort. They had problems retaining people, and a lot of them did struggle a little bit with the compliance required with the setup of their different organisations. So Fabelo was actually put up as an example of, where you might be able to share the load a little bit. Anyway, I'll introduce Mark. He is the chair of Fabelo. Is that right, Mark?
Yes.
And I will let him give a bit of background into where it came from. Mark's also a member of the Regional Arts Victoria Board, so we're really grateful to have him along today. So thanks, Mark. Can you just give us an intro and of yourself and what your background is and how Fabelo came into being?
Thanks, Stacie. I always find it hard to describe. I describe myself as a producer and a promoter. Worked in the commercial side of the entertainment industry, mostly around family touring shows and events. Too hard to describe the hundreds of things we've done. Not really well known in Australia because most of the work was overseas. We did do things here, like we produced all the entertainment for the Torch Relay, had a contract with SOCOG for 4 years. But in the live touring game, we licensed from mostly Hollywood studios the global rights to some of their television shows, and then designed, choreographed, produced, wrote, directed, and then staged tours across the world, depending upon whether or not they were popular on TV. So, for example, Scooby-Doo, broadcast in 160 countries, from Japan to England to Spain to Uruguay, and we went to all those places with a show. I'm not the creative guy. I'm the guy that pitched Warner Brothers and then raised the capital and made sure that we were making as much money as we could and that everybody was happy. So that's my background. And so I've retired just as COVID struck. Was the last engagement I had. I was chair of an entertainment group out of Hong Kong. And very quickly realised that I was not going to be very happy unless I was doing something. It's very hard to retire. If anybody's thinking about it, just think twice. You've always got to have something to do. So down this way in South Gippsland during COVID, which I guess was probably similar to up around the Surf Coast, we were able to get out and about, but there were certain limitations. And so a group of us got together and recognised that South Gippsland, not really known for its arts and culture, but does have a rich history of it. And it didn't have no major events down this way. The Shire, if you like, sort of sees themselves as being a boutique arts organisation. In other words, lots of little things, and that's partly because they don't fund much, and partly because the population down here is quite small. So there was no arts organisation down here that would take the risk to present shows and or help fund to start things going. And the research we did sort of try to identify what had worked in the past and what were some of the issues. And the issues were pretty simple, exactly what Stacie said to begin with, an enormous amount of fatigue. The example I gave Stacie, in Foster, which is a town of about 2,500 people, maybe 2,000. There's two ladies that are currently on the committee of the Foster Arts Music Drama Association, and this is their 60th year, and they were there in the first year. And it's exhausting for them.
That's dedication.
It is dedication, but it's also now sort of moved beyond knowing what to do. So we recognise that a lot of people didn't want to do the more governance-related activities around. So we just created this we incorporated a business, a not-for-profit, called it Fabelo because we were looking for a URL that we could own, and we were looking for a one word because we think it's better than two words to call your organisation. And Fabelo in Esperanto means story, so it all sort of made sense to us. Frankly, it doesn't make sense to many other people, but it made sense to us. And so Fabelo Incorporated just started as a not-for-profit. Last year we became a charity, and as we speak, the ATO are looking at our credentials to endorse us for a donation gift register rights, so that we can then start to do a bit more than what we have in the past, which is occasionally, and I can explain about that, but occasionally give away a bit of money, but also act as an auspicing group. So Fabelo has 5 members: treasurer, secretary, a vice chair, a chair, and a member.
Right.
It doesn't seek anybody else. Those 5 people meet 4 times a year. And it gets reports from the 2 current groups it auspices and a couple of other projects that it has been involved with. It's very early days. It's formed in 2020, and you know it's a bright idea, but to say that it's the benchmark or it's the way forward is probably a little bit early. The same problem applies to Fabelo as it does to anybody else. I mean, the secretary of the organisation has just been promoted to run the Department of Transport's Capital Works program across Victoria, and is saying, how am I going to fit Fabelo into my new job? And so you still get that will still happen. But what it's meant as is that the 2 auspice groups, which are Fishy Stories, a children's literature festival, and Prom Recitals, a classical music promoter, they don't have secretaries or treasurers, or they don't have to worry about insurances. They don't do any filing with Consumer Affairs Victoria. All they worry about is what their purpose is. And
as entities of themselves, how are they actually set up? Like, so
there is no entity.
Right. Okay. So, and
they're called a working group of Fabelo Incorporated.
Right.
The names are business names, if you like, Fishy Stories and Prom Recitals. They have URLs that are owned by Fabelo. They are covered by insurances obtained through Regional Arts Victoria in terms of volunteer insurance, and obviously their programs are covered by public liability and the general liability that Regional Arts Victoria gives. So they're really volunteers. They don't hold any formal roles with the incorporated. Now, I'm chair of one, and I run marketing on Prom Recitals, so I'm on that committee as well. Yeah. So some of the Fabelo people are on the other organisations as well.
Right. Yes, and that's like you were saying, it's probably I guess being early days, that's probably a necessity, because it wasn't this whole idea born out of your engagement with like one or both of those festivals?
Yeah, so Prom recitals came first, so we decided that we should be during COVID, bringing down classical musicians from Melbourne to South Gippsland. And when you look at how, who's the contracting party, who underwrites the risk in case it makes a loss, who writes the venue contract, Fabelo does all of that.
Right. Prom
recitals is on, it's Fabelo, if you like, trading as Prom recitals, and the same with Fishy Stories, which is a children's story festival based in Fish Creek.
Yeah. So, and when I was mentioning this today to one of the members of our task force, we were talking about this model and how it could work really well in areas where there are multiple organisations that essentially have the same vision, like, or the same core vision, which I think Fabelo's is, what is the vision of Fabelo? It's basically
its purpose is to bring arts, cultural programs to South Gippsland for the residents and the visitors to make their lives more enjoyable. Yeah, and to provide work for people and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so it's aspirational but suitably broad, so that if there are other arts and culture festivals or events or organisations that want to come under your umbrella, it's an easy thing to join onto. But this particular member of the task force was saying, well, wouldn't there be different insurances and requirements for different types of delivery? Like he was saying, well, performing arts is completely different to the visual arts. And I said, well, actually, they cover like a children's literature festival and a music event. So I would say that those two would have quite different requirements. Is that right? Or
well, the RAV policy for public liability is obviously you've got to nominate under that what Fabelo's doing. And so it covers it. I mean, not that we've ever claimed and tested it, but from the setup, it actually works. So no, we haven't determined that. We haven't taken out, if we, as an organisation, we don't own assets. We've not tried to own assets. So there's no insurance there for lights or tents or whatever it is. We're always the most thing we have is we did a sponsorship deal with a local winemaker, and in my garage is 10 dozen bottles of wine, which everybody wants to keep, but I've locked away. But that's the only asset we have.
Right.
The other thing I should say, that after 3 years, the way that the two working groups has changed, in that one is a bit more formal and has a chair.
Right.
But it's really not chairman of anything. They really chair the meeting, set the agenda and follow up. And that's one way. The other one has a shared chair.
Right.
So every meeting, the chair shifts to another member of the committee.
Right.
So it's a shared leadership role, if you like. And that means that on that committee, each person has to get a little bit more deeply involved in what everybody's doing, because that for 1 or 2 meetings a year, they will lead those meetings and do obviously the agendas and take all the notes. So they need to be able to work things through. So, and that was partly because that committee they didn't have a chair. It was me, and I said I wasn't going to do it. I needed somebody else to step up. And we thought we would explore this, and it's actually worked quite well.
Right. So everyone knows what's involved, and it also guarantees they're very engaged then if they're needing to get up to speed with all the chair's
it sort of means that you can't have any committee members hiding.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got to step up and do it.
Yeah. So technically speaking, but I know this might be different to what's actually happening on the ground, technically speaking, Fabelo and the members of Fabelo need not get involved in the operational duties of each of those festivals you know, should they have,
Correct.
say, their own subcommittees of people who, working groups who are able to deliver those individually, they can focus on the design of those, I guess, setting up the event and just the doing. And Fabelo would just look after the compliance.
So 2
and
of the
so on, so
5 members don't do anything. What they rely on is reports from meetings. And obviously the treasurer does a finance report. So, you know, their concerns about, are these organisations conducting themselves appropriately? Are they committing Fabelo to risk, brand risk, financial risk, volunteer risk, and so on? And so they don't. As long as they're comfortable with that, and they are, because that's a process. So anyways, that's a process of reporting. They don't need to be involved.
Right. And you have a risk policy?
We do. We don't really have a brand risk policy per se, and frankly, the financial risk policy is pretty. And I'm going to oversimplify it. We're a not-for-profit, but essentially we say we're not for loss.
Right. Yeah.
So we operate as a not-for-loss, which means that you can only go. So the model of the classical music group is a commercial model. You're bringing in and paying full rates to artists. You have your normal promoting costs. You have your normal venue and production costs, and you hope to sell more tickets to make a margin.
Right.
That margin in that case, so Prom Recitals has a different purpose. It does 3 things. It wants to bring great classical music down here. It wants to play as many South Gippsland venues as it can, but it also puts between $3,000 and $6,000 a year into the South Gippsland secondary college music programs by bringing in professional musicians to do workshops with students, and where it's possible, professional development with teachers.
Right.
And so that money is variable because it depends upon how successful we were the year before. So now both the organisations have built a capital base, so they undertake their own risk. That capital sits in a bank account called Prom Recitals, but it's actually Fabelo's. It just happens to be a bank account.
Yeah.
But for the member of that committee, they can see every time we have a meeting, how much money's in the bank. There are budgets done around and cash flows done with an opening bank balance and obviously a closing bank balance. So that's pretty straightforward. And so the financial risks there are a promoting risk, the normal risks.
Yeah.
With Fishy Stories, it is one of those classic festivals where there's very little of recurring revenue, building a base of commercial sponsorship with local commercial organisations. There is ticket sales, but it's doesn't drive a lot of money because tickets are only $12.50 for children.
Yeah.
You do raffles.
Festival for children.
Yeah, exactly. You do raffles and things. So it's still building a base around being sustainable, and part of that comes out of its ability to ultimately, as a literacy event, deeply involved with schools across Victoria and growing interstate, and as a festival, it is attracting donations from philanthropic organisations that are looking to support children's literacy. And we have sufficient capital between the 2 organisations and Fabelo after 3 years of trading, where we are now going to contract an external person on a monthly stipend to help us.
Right.
And that person, it's not a massive amount of hours, but that person will yet again remove some of the onerous work from the volunteers, so they don't have to be doing some of the things that drive people crazy.
Give us an example of what that might be.
Following up people, booking a venue for a meeting,
right?
Herding cats, through to social media.
Right. Okay.
Some of us, don't either have an interest all the time, and it's so engaged these days, you've got to be more engaged. And so the projected margins of the three organisations on an annual basis will now recover whatever we spend on a part-time administrator. So ultimately here, we're looking for organisations that can move to financial sustainability, that produce a margin that can help pay for a part-time person, that can reduce the workload for volunteers to make it more interesting and enjoyable for volunteers to stay on the groups that they've joined in the first place.
Sounds great in theory.
Yeah, so it's not, we're still going along that path.
Yeah.
Our number one issue, our number one obstacle still remains people, because life changes for everybody, and life has changed substantially through COVID to where we are today. We're working against also something that the chair of Regional Arts Victoria said today, which was cycle of contraction. I wrote it down. I love the comment. Money's hard to come by, and people are making different experiences. Tickets aren't selling as well, and so we're sort of cutting our cloth, hopefully, accordingly. But ultimately, this will rise or fall on the back of people, and despite how easy you make it. Yeah,
that's right. And you were saying to me last time we spoke that there's been, I guess, despite having what could be perceived to be as a great model that's going to save people a lot of time and effort, you've had some resistance to uptake.
I can't remember what the context was.
From other organisations,
yes,
in
absolutely.
the region.
The founder example is a really good example of an organisation who don't really have any real genuine understanding around today's liabilities and governance. They rely on a pro bono local accountant to help them. But for them to join us, there's a feeling of a sense of loss of identity of them, and that's what they've done for 60 years. Plus, do they trust us to be as much of a guardian around their brand and what they've created as they are?
Yeah.
And part of that we see is you've got, and this is great to talk about it, but you've got to, and I'm being a bit cliche, but you've got to walk the talk. Yeah. So we're doing that. The door's open, and at the moment we're not pursuing it. We did pursue it quite a little bit more vigorously and got pushback because of those two things: loss of identity, loss of control. Sorry, three things. And how do you develop programs of trust? And ultimately, these are the things that will either stop or start. It'll be easier for startups. If someone came to us and said, we want to start a jazz festival in Inverloch, can you auspice us? That's an easier one to do than somebody comes to us and say, we've got 15 years of trading, we want a seat at the table, and our answer is sure, that's no problem. But there's other people at the table. But that has been a pushback so far.
But and have you thought, because I'm thinking, if you're running your own organisation in Fabelo, would you put restrictions on, I guess, those who do come under your umbrella? Or I guess, is that just a matter of guidance for you? You'd just provide that guidance of, if something did look like, they need a bit of help with, some kind of direction or experience, perhaps you'd be offering that as well, I'm assuming.
There's a few things that we thought were important. One was the risk profile, and particularly the financial risk. If they came with a budget that included something which we didn't believe would make sense financially, we'd need to have the ability to say no.
Right. Yeah.
And we tempered that by saying that if you want to do something and make a loss, that's fine. The funds to cover that would come out of the funds that you already have, or earned funds from other things that you're doing. The second was around, I guess, we were very happy they would have their own bank accounts, access to bank accounts, but they didn't have to pay the invoices, but they could be co-signatories on everything. And so we sort of addressed that with them, because we need to, if Fabelo's paying the bills, it needs to be able to control the bank accounts.
Yeah.
And they can be co-signatory on a bank account with us, but that was one thing. That was the second. And the third ultimately was really about, brand reputation. They've just got to, if they're doing something, they can't be shoddy,
Yeah.
You can't cut corners. You've got to do it properly.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're protecting a broader brand, so which is fair enough.
Well, if they're setting up a stage and it's on the back of a truck, and the truck is, and they've got some speakers hanging off with gaffer tape, and the speakers fall off, that's the problem.
Yes.
So we want to see what they're doing.
Right. So it's quality in, I guess, at risk and safety, as well as quality of, I guess, the content of the production that they're putting on as well.
Yeah. The issue that we had on a couple of occasions, one organisation basically came in and said, "Oh, that's great. You can now run this for us," as distinct from auspicing it and doing all the governance. They said, "Now you can be the operator of the event." And we said, no, you're missing the point. You need to continue to do what you're doing. We're just going to make it easy for you by not having to worry about paying your bills, taking the risk. We'll take the financial risk, and all those other risks I talked about. And but
the idea is brilliant, simply because it enables the creative people to be creative. I think where smaller organisations may have run into trouble, particularly in terms of governance, is that getting that crossover of skills. I'm someone who wants to create, build a festival, put something on that's fantastic, do an exhibition, or build workshops, but my skill set does not lie in poring over legal documents, or, making sure that we've filled out all the right forms, or, pulled a budget together. So I guess the idea of this model is to ensure that the creatives remain creative and do what they're good at, and you take care of the rest.
It does. There's an organisation down here called It's No Drama, which is a theatre group.
Great.
So Samara Cunningham, who lives in Fish Creek, Samara doesn't need any of us, because the way that she has structured what she's doing, and so we will support her in any way we can. But from an external organisation, she just doesn't need it.
Yeah,
and that's because the way she structured herself, the way that she wants to do everything she's doing, whether it's raising funds or producing something, it's better for her to have her own organisation.
Because she has it. she's and they seem to be managing quite well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So what do you see as would be a success for Fabelo, and have you set any, I guess, intentions that way?
Success ultimately is that we have set some boundaries around this. Is once we generate our DGR status, we want to be an organisation that can attract individuals and organisations who want to be actively promoting arts and culture in South Gippsland. And there's a number of people out there indicating they will support us once we get this in place. The second measure is around the committee itself. It's about ensuring that we have succession in place amongst all positions, which means that we need to double the size of Fabelo. And again, we've got to start that walking, but that succession needs to be enshrined in time. So people spend maximum 3 years in a role. They can come back to general membership and do something else, but ultimately there needs to be successors in that. So having achieved that, that's a measure of success. And then there's really the operational measures of how our audiences, our artists, our community reacts to us in terms of doing our job to make the lives of those who live here and visit here more fun, more enjoyable, more worthy.
Wonderful. I mean, and I guess getting back to that DGR status, because we didn't really cover that, just in case people don't know about what that means. What does it mean, and what do you think it'll mean for Fabelo? I think you just alluded to it then when you were talking.
I won't go into the technical description, but I can tell you it means that should you wish to donate funds, you can get a receipt for those funds and offset them against your tax liabilities in any given year. So it's like donating to the Royal Children's Hospital.
Yeah. So all donations are tax deductible. That statement.
Yeah. So RAB's doing the year campaign at the moment.
Yeah. And
it's using a third party to generate that tax deductibility, but that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a deeper, broader organisational, which is around bequests. But to get to that state, you really got to have a far more engaged donor portfolio of individuals and organisations. We have a wonderful example in South Gippsland, which you may or may not have heard of. It's called the Murbu North Community Foundation. And a farmer, for various reasons, left about $6 million to them to be used for community requirements, including the arts, but only within a 50-kilometre of diameter of Murbu North.
Right. Are you within that radius?
No, we're not.
Right. Oh.
And so they have a full-time CEO who's a highly trained and successful, not just as an administrator, but in funds development, and they are building a bequest program.
Right.
So I'm sure there's models everywhere, but that's the big thing. So and RAB's on the similar path. Can larger organisations as well as smaller organisations say to those in the community that want to support the arts in their region, just give us 3%, 2%, 1%, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, they're long-term outcomes. You're talking 10, 15, 20, 30-year type outcomes.
You have to have a few runs on the board before you'll perhaps attract those.
Yeah, and beyond my time.
And so if someone came along to the sorry, I'm going to say it's Fishy Tales, isn't it? Not
Fishy Stories.
Fishy Stories. I did exactly the opposite of what I was intending to do.
Fishy Tales is a fish and chip shop.
That's right. So if someone came along to the Fishy Stories event and they happened to have just inherited a great deal of money from Great Aunt Joan, and they thought this is such a fantastic festival, but they'd be like, well, I really want to donate to the festival. Would they do that via the DGR status of Fabelo?
Well, currently they'd get no tax deduction.
Yeah. Well, once you have that DGR status.
So yes, but I mean, the key thing there would be, what's our story? Why? Yes, they want to donate, but what purpose do they want to accomplish? So Fishy Stories is based around engaging children more deeply in story making and storytelling. And it does that through this term 3 in-class project, which meets the English curriculum. And last year we had 911 children from across Victoria into other states and the Sydney Metropolitan enter a story. We then take 20 of those selected by 4 judging panels, which include children, and perform them at the festival. So that's the anchor of the festival. And then we surround that by bringing in other authors to do workshops and illustrators. We have a lot of community story making and storytelling. The libraries are involved, and then in the hall we'll put on some performances and entertainment, bring in people like Box Wars, so that there's this whole day of activity. But everything we do, we say, is that about story making or storytelling.
Yeah.
So if somebody walked into the festival and said, I think that's really important, what can my money do to help you with that purpose? It may be that you would have to assign it to not generic gross revenue to the festival, but to something that was around specifically relating to children, and then you would work with that person or organisation to determine what does that look like, what does that mean.
Yeah. Lise has asked a question. Have you got access to the chat? If not, I'll just read it out, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's up there.
Lise from Future Tense says, I'm interested to know if there's any issue finding people operating at the appropriate level of quality to work with. And he says, as you mentioned, many who operate at that level are able to run their own entities. Is it possible your potential partners will require more support than just risk management?
Well, the second half of the question first, yes, they require us to do everything, pay the bills, do all the filing, arrange the audits, do all the reporting. So it's not just risk management, it's just one facet of it. The first half to that question is that it is difficult to find people. Everybody that we have on this committee have a relationship or a connection to South Gippsland. Mm-hmm. 3 of the 5 grew up here. 2 of the 5 were born here. One is a senior chartered accountant with a multinational pharmaceutical firm running Asia, and the other, as I just said, has got this promotion to run a capital works program for the Victorian state government. They're both interested in the arts, so that had to be something. Mm. And they both were interested because of the purpose was around South Gippsland.
Yeah.
We only do 4 meetings a year. We do have some side meetings, so you don't call upon them particularly often.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of transactions, less than 200, so it's not a huge treasury role. Yes, it isn't easy. No, definitely not easy. And you've got to work hard to find these people, and obviously networking is the key.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you finding that you're constantly having to do that?
I'm not having to do it, but I must say I go out to dinner and meet somebody and think, hello. Yeah. What can I line you up for?
Leith said he was thinking more in terms of the people who bring initiatives to you for auspicing, I guess. And you did allude to that before when we were talking about the quality of production. And
so we auspiced last in 2022, and it finished. Went for 1 year. It was around the International Women's Day, and we did a group called Celebrate Her. Came to us, and they wanted to create and publish a book with 24 unheralded women of South Gippsland. And they needed an organisation in order to apply for grants. They needed an organisation to hold the bank account. They needed an organisation. They wanted some money from us, which we gave them. They wanted to know then they had the insurances for the commitments they were making and so on. So that project ended in March of last year with the publication of the book. So that's what we offered them was if you like, we became their vehicle. They didn't have to have any of that, and all they did was get on with interviewing, photographing and writing and rewriting and then rewriting again and then publishing.
So, and they just checked in with you from time to time to make sure that they weren't going over budget, or like were they keeping to us?
The limit of our liability was the money we gave them. The limit of our capital requirement was the money we gave them, and they had submitted budgets which included them underwriting it with. They had found people to help them do that, and an organisation. So it began with, we've got a shortfall. Can you meet that shortfall? And then can you do these other things for us? Right.
And well, I guess the outcome of that was the book. I was going to say you're going to develop a long-term relationship with them, but I guess the outcome.
They were so exhausted at the end of 12 months. They said, if someone else wants to take it, be our guest.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything, Mark. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No,
recommendations for people thinking of going down this path?
It takes time, and it's about people. If you can find a really good local person that can. The two key roles, frankly, are secretary and treasurer, and then somebody who leads, and the rest will follow. And so those are the key areas. So,
I think a big challenge in a few areas that exist down here, where there's multiple organisations that are potentially doing the same thing and who may be looking at a model like this, is the bringing everyone together and agreeing on the terms of how it's all laid out. As you were just saying, bringing Fabelo, pretty much starting from scratch, is almost easier than retrofitting this model to.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to share. We have a very simple 2-page terms, if you like. So Prom Recitals operates under certain terms, but nobody from Prom Recitals signs the document because they don't have any position to sign from. They'd be signing as Anne Jones, as distinct from a representative of an organisation. So again, there's a fair amount of legal ramifications if Prom Recitals to go out and lose $10,000. That is Fabelo's problem.
Yeah.
But there is somebody on the Prom Recitals committee and the Fishy Stories committee that's on the Fabelo board. So they've always got somebody there.
And do you anticipate that would be the same case moving into, the bigger you get? Will that always be the case?
Yeah, and yes, I'm not sure. I mean, Fabelo, as it's gone along this, the DGR status, if we're able to attract the sort of funds we hope for, Fabelo may turn out to be more an organisation that you can get a grant from.
Right.
Locally. As well as being someone that might auspice you. It's not everybody that, you've got to be pretty brave and to a degree pretty stupid to start something up these days. So, forgive me, all those people listening. I probably don't have to tell you all. You already know.
No, I'm pretty sure everyone knows.
Yeah.
You were just saying it just made me think of something else, but it's completely left my head. I
mean, the Shire doesn't contribute to Fabelo in any other way, but good on you. Keep going.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what I was going to say. You've got that other, I guess, purpose in that some of your funds actually go to supporting other organisations. Like you were saying, like the proceeds from the Prom Recitals event goes to supporting bringing musicians into schools. So you do have that other.
Yeah. So we go to, there's 5 public secondary colleges in South Gippsland. They have an annual camp, and we add to that by either in the past bringing in cash so they can do it, or bringing in professionals. But again, that's, we pay that directly. Fabelo pays that. You don't give the money holes bolus. You actually, because it gives if you like, an audit trail of where the money's gone.
Yeah. No, but it's a fantastic, I guess, vision to work towards, because that you've got this, it's place-based, it's specific for the region, and, wanting to build it towards something where there is this, dedicated pot of money that is for arts and culture that, that is driven by the community, is for community, is a really wonderful thing. There should be more of it. So good luck.
Thank you.
I hope it
and
goes
if anybody's
well.
coming down to South Gippsland,
well, I'm sure.
In November the 17th, come to Fishy Stories, or come and see a concert. And that's the Prom behind me. You can't quite see it. That's Corner Inlet and the Prom. So
too sunny a day today.
Yeah.
We're going to love the Prom. Well, thanks for your time today, Mark. That's been fantastic. And
pleasure.
We look forward to hearing about Fabelo into the future.
No worries.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.